Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your attendance today. My name is Pamela Gutierrez, and I'm going to be the MC of this morning's sessions. In the afternoon, we have Miguel Navarro, who will present the presentations for the afternoon. Welcome to the Energy Transition in Mining in Perumin, 37th edition. For me, it's an honor to moderate this space of mining, hydrocarbon, consultants from the public and private sector, representative of the academia, international organizations, local groups, and thank you very much to all of you because your attendance gives life to this forum. We are in a very decisive moment of time. Energy transition is the core item in the agenda of the challenges and opportunities in the mining and energy sectors. It's not only in Peru, but worldwide. In our country, we are establishing the route map according to our needs and reality. This is very important to underscore. Within this context, Peru has a very privileged position. We have 8 of the 16 critical minerals necessary for the transition, and we have an electrical network that is sustainable and competitive. This network supports the production of these minerals. So this forum is space of dialogue and analysis where the experience and knowledge are the tools to face the global challenges and build shared solutions amongst us. This is the spirit that we start this day. So I'll give the floor to the chairman of the forum, Engineer José Estela Ramirez, who will present the objectives and the agenda that will guide our gathering. Thank you, José, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Pamela. Good morning, everyone. It is a great honor to welcome you all to this Energy Transition in Mining Forum, the first in its type in Perumin. We are conducting this within this 37th Perumin edition. So we have a common goal to promote from the mining sector a strategic agenda for decarbonization and innovation that will place our country, Peru, and Latin America in the center of the critical mineral geopolitics within this energy period of time. Numbers are very critical. Only 20% of the energy consumption around the world is electricity. For 2050, 25 years from now, it will be 50% of electric energy consumption, and this market will grow 30%. We are talking about leap of 300%. Let's remember a fundamental thing. Without mining, there is no electricity, and a low-carbon society will be necessarily society high in metals. So the agenda of this forum is divided into 4 main sections, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. In the morning, we will start with the first section, Energy Transition and Sustainability in Mining. Then we will have a coffee break, a 20-minute break. Then we will continue with the second section, Energy Policy and Competitive in Mining in Peru. We will have 4 speakers. In the afternoon, we will have the critical minerals geopolitics in Latin America for energy transition, a coffee break, and after that, we will have the 4th section, future of decarbonization in regional mining. At each section, we will have well-known speakers, 24 participants in total from 7 different nationalities in the region and other regions. Amongst them, we will have 5 former ministers of energy and mines from Argentina, Ecuador, and Peru. We also have leaders coming from global companies from both energy and the mineral sector, BHP, Barrick, Anglo-American, Southern Peaks Mining, Poderosa, and Calpa. And also representative from entrepreneurial organizations within the mining industry from the region. So we will have conversations to exchange ideas, to generate alliances, and to use this forum as a connection platform and a solution for a shared future. So this forum is transmitted on Streamline of the IIMP platform because of the good welcoming it has had in the past months, and they are viewing this through the channel of the IIMP. So this energy transition is not something that is far away, it's occurring right now. The critical minerals are the base of renewable energy, digitization, national and homeland security, and social transformation and demographic transformation in our region. This forum reflects that spirit that will be plural, international, with a female participation of 38%. 9 of these 24 are women, and this is 5 times the participation that the mining sector has, that is around 80%. Also, we have an agenda that will open our way towards the World Mining Congress in 2026. The chairwoman of this Congress is attending this forum, and this will be held next year in June, after 52 years. So we will be present in this great event. I would like to express my thanks to the Peruvian Mine Engineering Institute for commissioning the whole organization of this full day to talk about energy transition here in Perumin. Thanks as well to each of the speakers, to the panel members, to the moderators that will share their knowledge and experiences throughout this day. Finally, thank you all for being here, for giving life to this forum. So I invite you to enjoy this day with enthusiasm and commitment. So I invite you to build today the future for energy, mining, and the sustainable development of our region. Welcome to this forum in Peru, 37th edition. Thank you very much, Jose. We all know the effort to make this space a reality and the reflections on mining this represents. So we invite Seti Gavilan that will present the future of energy transition and sustainability in mining in Latin America. So please, Seti Gavilan. Seti is a mining engineer graduated from the Universidad Nacional de San Marcos. He has a master's degrees in mine and geophysics from the University of Arizona, and also an MBA from the University Francisco de Victoria. He also holds a master's degree in homeland defense by the High Studies of National High Studies, and he's been managing world-class mining projects. Now he serves as operations director for assets of Glencore Copper Peru. He has played different positions in Minera Las Bamba, Nexa Resources, Yamana Gold, Torex Gold, and Barrick Gold in Peru, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Welcome, Seti. Thank you very much. First of all, good morning, everyone. Dear convention participants, and as Vice President, Vice Chairman of the IIMP, thank you for welcoming the 37th edition of Perumin. This is the 82nd year of the Institute of the mine engineers in Peru. So we are in our 37th edition. So it's been a long tradition and evolution that has gone through different topics and issues that has made changes in the technical side to a conglomerate of activities that are broader. And this is the mining system. So I hope that my presentation is not that uh, light, but I think that they are very important concepts relevant to the industry and our future. Mining is a global activity that generates opportunities. This activity has evolved as well over time, historically related to our way of shaping our societies, as I'm going to show you in the next picture that I care much. So now we are facing a very important challenge related to the minerals that are part of the energy transition. Some would say that there are some minerals, 70 minerals, 34 for some others, and I think that they are much more. But we still have a global view on sustainable mining development that it's the future, it's our future, and we've been forging this for the past 30 or more years. This picture is a very interesting picture. It is from 1500, 1450 before Christ. So what we see here, these are anodes, color blisters, refined from that period of time. They were found in Crete in the royal villa palace, Sakros Palace, and they have this script of transaction between Cyprus, one of the first places where we found copper, and Crete, that is now, well, really Greek, and the Hellenic colony. This is the Minoic culture, to be more exact. We already had trade transactions, and we have these scripts of that transaction and technology to have these copper blisters. So this shows how mining has been related to the civilization's evolution and the global economic development. Energy transition. Energy transition, and maybe you all know as a concept, but we need to redefine it, is the response at a global level to climate change. It is one of the responses globally to climate change. And within this energy transition, the goal is to prevent the greenhouse gases. We have the carbon dioxide, methane, the nitrous oxides, and the fluorinated gases, and these account for this 94% of greenhouse gases. So we have 5 important axes: circular economy, energy efficiency, renewable energy, ecofuels, and of course electromobility that account for this energy transition. But all of them are important. They complement, and they are fundamental elements on this effort for the energy transition. Energy transition is a global effort nowadays at a global level, at a state level. Okay, there are many states already committed in all the COPs up to 2050 that what needs to be done to prevent the rise of 2 degrees centigrade of the average temperature of the Earth. But there is also the technological transition, and this is a very important element because this also promotes and drives the development of other minerals that are not related specifically to this energy transition, but they are within this critical mineral group. And the economic blocs and countries have defined critical minerals within their government and state policies. Some examples of what we expect and we will be facing in the future. We have the 5G network massification. We're already talking about 6G, the Internet of Things, generalized for everything, advanced artificial intelligence, that we will be getting to the singularity, and this is about that the artificial intelligence will exceed human intelligence. Someone will say in 2030, 2040, 2050, but maybe they will not reach it because not all that comes from the past is going to be used for the decisions for the future or the intentionality that human beings would like to happen in the future. Hyper augmented reality, hyper virtual reality. This is where we see the autonomous transportation when taking a taxi, industrial transformation, sophisticated robotization, autonomous systems, genomics, nanotechnology, biotechnology, the new technologies of storage and renewable energy. And in mining, this is a zero-entry mining that has been coined that is related to the autonomy of the equipment in the mining areas, where it is expected not to have people operating and preventing hazards. We have made important evolutions on this. And space mining, and this is something that it's being discussed in different fora and how this will be carried out in mining industry specifically. This is a short table, kind of old, not that old, developed by the International Energy Agency. And we can see some of the minerals for energy transition and the technologies associated to electrical technology. And I've put those related to the mining activity in Peru. And we have all the types of energies, from the solar photovoltaic, the wind, hydro, both offshore and onshore, geothermal, and also the nuclear energy that we sometimes overlook. But these are energies that has a small carbon footprint. This is another slide that comes from the International Energy on how much is used of what in each of these renewable energies: offshore wind, onshore wind, solar photovoltaic, nuclear, coal as well, and natural gas. Regarding coal and critical minerals, this is another chart developed by the European Commission in 2020. It's still valid and defines the sources or the metals or minerals that are required, their criticality level, and how they are interlinked with the energy transition energies and technological transition, and how they go to the sectors of renewables, e-mobility, and defense and space. And I would like to speak about coal that I was talking about before. The amount of steel required to install megawatts of energy, if we could name it like that, this is higher, very higher than a conventional energy. The photovoltaic per each megawatt needs 3 times more steel because of the panels, the shape, etc. Wind energy needs 7 times more steel. Of course, like those composites for the elements that made up. But steel is made of coal. Do we have efforts to change this matrix or network for gas? But it's not still feasible at least for many generations in the future. So an energy transition for renewable, either conventional or non-conventional energy, needs more coal. So a big chunk of our future is related not only to critical metals, but all as well those traditional metals, at least for a transition period. And this is something that this will be evolving. Peru is a large producer of metals. And also, here we have a chart coming from the Ministry of Energy and Mines on the $63 billion in projects already defined and identified. And we also have the exploration projects. So we know that these are the foundation of this sector. We have almost all metals. The only one that is missing here in Peru is lithium, but it has a minor investment around $5 billion. So this can tell us the path that the projects are taking. We have a project of Matusani. It is not a new project, but it comes from the 60s. So what is invested here in Peru? This chart is also from the Ministry of Energy and Mines, the latest report. The first investor here in Peru comes from China. We have Las Bambas, Chinalco, and projects, large projects to be developed. Canada in the second place, the United States in third place, Mexico fourth place, and fifth, Australia. Now talking about the future and how we see introspectively our own market. One important indicator for this energy transition is copper. And we have the evolution, the budgets on copper exploration specifically. I've centered here the Americas, North Americas, what we have in Canada. In Chile, it's very important what we have, and also the investments in Peru in copper exploration. If we all know, if we join Chile and Peru, over 50% to be exactly, the total production of copper come from Chile and Peru. But we also have other actors like Argentina and Ecuador, very important, that brings more capacity in Latin America specifically. Well, here the challenge is North America has been the region in the Americas with the largest explorations. But this will go up because demand is so high because of the supply, and the mines are too small from what is required. So there will be an increase in the investments and also in people, right? In people to be able to develop these projects. Some geopolitical issues. This is something new from 2024. The European law on, or the Critical Act, or Critical Mineral Act from the European Union was passed in May 2024. And if I'm not wrong, I think in October 2023, this was submitted. So it was developed very quickly, and it was passed in 2024, in October, last October. Some important things on this critical act on critical raw materials. So by 2030, at least 10% of the annual consumption of the European Union countries needs to be extracted from the European Union. At least 40% of its processing. One thing is to buy the raw material, and a different thing to processing. The consumption needs to be within the European Union. At least 20% of the consumed raw materials need to be recycled in the European Union, and this will trigger a very interesting thing about recycling and circular economy, and up to 65%, two-thirds almost, needs to be from one third party. Chile could produce 5 million tons of copper, but not all needs to be purchased from Chile. So there are some geopolitical strategies for this. Some geopolitical contexts like Argentina and Canada. There are some law changes in Argentina that are very important. These incentive systems for the large investments. This is a tax benefit system offered in Argentina, not only for mining, but for large investments. So it is about all industries, but they are really relevant. So the tax is reduced at least to half of it. This is the most competitive attraction for investments. So this is related to the geopolitical changes, the changes in the Congress in Argentina. Maybe this could change. But the intent exists of many international companies in Argentina. In the Canadian case, we have the tariff imposition, these economic and political dynamics have many changes promoted by President Trump. So this imposed a tariff of 100% to the electrical vehicles. 81,000 electrical vehicles have been sold. 81 million electrical vehicles were sold. Over 50% of these 81 million were produced and sold in China, 11 electrical vehicles in China. So if you go back, you will see how these evolved from 500,000, 1 million. We are in 11%, 23% of participation. So there are other things that need to be solved on the way, like battery efficiency on this electrical vehicle sector. But there are some other energy transition cells that maybe will decelerate this. And this is an inevitable path. And we will see the market share of the e-vehicles will be dominant in the world. Regarding the United States, obviously the originator of big changes on how market of metals and copper are moving. It is true that we are affected in somehow, but not that relevant. The trade Peru and the United States helps a lot. This tariff is proposed to 20% on imports. Some are still at halt, others already activated. These depend on the geopolitics. This will depend on many things mentioned here on the slide, but this gives us a vision on how the mining industry will evolve. However, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, demand will be hugely more than the supply. So this will take us definitely to the development of our mining industry. However, mining still evolves, but we cannot think mining now without taking into consideration ESG, environment, social, and governance. I've just put here Copper Mark as an example. Nowadays, it's not conceivable to progress in mining without considering these aspects, ESG. When we see the Copper Mark, we see 33 characteristics or components within its structure. None of these characteristics or elements got to do with technology, production, economy. They are specifically related to social, environment, and governance. aspects. And this is in a day-to-day basis in all the board of directors of the international companies. We cannot conceive mining without considering this ESG aspect, and also in the development of each project. This is key that occupies our 80% of our time. As I said at the beginning, we started with this picture of 2,500 years ago, and we've been through many stages to the building of our society up to an economic system that is more inclusive, more considerate, and mining is not an exception. On the contrary, the mining is in the eye of the storm and is the eye of the storm, and this is the more important aspect that we need to take care of. Some mega trends, specifically in the copper industry. We have recycling, and this is one of the principles in economy, circular economy, that was within the components of energy transition. Nowadays, 32% of copper sold and produced is recycled. We thought that they come from mines, but it is recycled. And the potential, this accounted for 8 million tons per year. And in 2050, we need 50 million tons of annual production of copper, and even more, I think. But I think that 50 is one of the more consolidated numbers nowadays. So we need to double mine sites and double recycling. 62 million tons annual is the electronic waste to be recycled. And something important, the tailings. We now operate, and I can tell you this as an operator, up to 1.18 grade. That was impossible some time ago, but this is impossible. But this is now possible because of the technology, the state-of-the-art technology, evolved technology. Tailings in Peru has more than that. In many mines, we used to operate mines of 2% to 85%. So what I've left is 0.3, right? So these are relevant grades, and many countries are evolving to reprocess these tailings, and this got to do with circular economy and the reuse of waste in an efficient manner, and also the investment and the accelerated development in artificial intelligence, the advanced processing controls, the APCs, these intelligent systems, and these APCs, we will put the recommenders and then the integrators, and the final output is the automated plants, and the decisions are made with artificial intelligence, with LLM, large language model, and I think this is the future we'll be facing soon. Not only applied for large operations, but this will also migrate to small scale and small size operations. Advanced technology in explorations. We use artificial intelligence for subsurface operations, something that seemed science fiction, obviously is necessary for space exploration. As I said at the beginning, this is a reality. Sometimes they are good. They are sometimes good, great, or much great, but most of the times it's just a small amount of grade. So in copper, sulfides, leaching is something that has been developed for many decades, and this could become a profitable opportunity with the aid of advanced technologies. megatrends on the mining fleets. As you all know, carbon footprints, the largest one that exists in a mining operation, are not the plants. The plants will use electricity from the grid, but this comes from the fleet, the truck fleets, and these fleets are the ultra class fleet. These are the 400 tons short of capacity, and in Peru are 400 tons long. When we demand the equipment its maximum capacity, and this has a technological things for their solution. We have the elevated trolley, the fuel cells, the energy cells, and we have the batteries. Regarding batteries, there is also a constant and permanent development. We have the LFP, lithium iron phosphorus, lithium titanate, LTO batteries, and sodium batteries. These are not necessarily applied to vehicles because of their weight, but they are low cost and for large amount of energy storage. Photovoltaic energy, for instance, has 23, 24, 25% capacity. So this could be stored in the cells and to have availability. And this is a low-cost technology. The rail trolley, some operations are already developing this with high-speed, with a very good transition evolution for the next year, because the goal maybe is to get to batteries when technology could be developed at when it comes on hybrids, hybrid e-vehicles. They're also recharges. It's like a Prius, right? A Prius, but in a giant truck. So these are recharges when it goes down the ramp, and they will recharge for the next cycle. And it's easily adaptable to any brand of trucks and the new technology batteries. I think that I'm on time, right, in my presentation. So some reflections, final reflections that I want to share with you on this short presentation, really. My intent is to give you an overlook rather than an academia lecture of what is going to happen in the future. We have a multipolar new world where the geopolitical axis has changed. In the past 100, 150 years was in the Strait of Hormuz. Now it's in China through the production of battery and critical mineral processing, rare earth elements like neodymium, praseodymium that are located in China that was not that we usually see because of technological reasons. There is geopolitical shift, and we'll be in this transition, and we will be needing fossils. Technological evolution will make this advancement fast or slow. Raw materials, inputs, it's a key element, and Latin America here has a very important role. We will be discussing this a little bit more. And Latin America has a little bit over 200 years of their independence. We were the last country to be independent. We had this combat of May the 2nd. This is an historical landmark because through this battle, the Hispanic power just left Peru. So Latin America is a source of oil, of water, of food, of minerals, of people. Of people. In fact, this is a very important element, a very important thing, and interesting as well. We've been discussing with some of my colleagues if we have some problems of geologists and mine energies. Our industry is that small that we are not able to absorb them all, and we can see them succeeding abroad. And this is a message of how much we have evolved in mining. I think that our country is too small to absorb all these professionals. We have talent. The Latin American economy, some more, some less, they have not exploited as much as they could have done it to promote their growth and to become a quicker developed country. This is a shame. Where am I talking about? The half of the continent is that rich and wasn't able to transform its resources in a general well-being, in a common well-being, that it's the final output of a state or final goal of a state. Chile produces 40% of copper of the world, but we have other actors as Argentina with this with this tariff incentive, a law. They have proposed themselves 50 million tons of production of copper by 2050. They have mega projects of copper now. Ecuador as well, it's another country that has big resources and big projects of copper, well, somehow affected because of their political problems. According to the administration, they will either be promoted or stopped, but the geological potential is there. If I talk about Brazil and in other Latin American countries, they have the potential of becoming more than half of the production of copper in the following 30 years. The higher standards and technologies adopted, what we have seen specifically in the mining industry in Peru. In my career, I've just gone from manual operations to technological-based operations, a great evolution in the technology of companies that came and brought higher standards and other things. I'm talking from the 1990s, social license to be able to operate, and regulation in Peru has become highly sophisticated. Sometimes it's too bureaucratic. We need to re-engineer this. But finally, this made a more robust and sound industry, a healthier and developed industry that we are looking for as well in our society. This is not only something specific to the large-scale mining. We have small, medium-sized mining. We also have a small-scale and artisanal mining. But the problem is that they need to be formal. Our reality is related to structure with law. Without this, a country cannot evolve and progress. That's impossible. To try to adapt to that reality, it is a path that we need to take. We will not get to the real development without order, without law. It's difficult to evolve as a country and as a society. Circular economy opportunities such as recycling and reprocessing of tailings are in the industry's agenda. All large-scale operations are looking at this aspect. But this is something curious because this does not come from the senior and large-scale companies, but the junior companies. The smallest are the ones that have been trying to make the most of their operations, but at the time, the technology was not that good to get 0.6 grade from their tailings. This is higher of what we are exploiting right now, but we have been able to develop technology for the reprocessing of tailings, and also with the progress of the advanced systems to control the plants, we are able to utilize the getting of these still low grades and utilize them. So this is it. This is what we have in the agenda to fill the gap we have to be able to achieve this energy transition. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Seti. You have told us the whole history of all our opportunities to keep on growing, but we do not know how much mineral is going to be required specifically for the electric energy, but also the whole effort to change the paradigm in the following years. Thank you very much. Next, we will introduce you the panel that will be moderated by Pamela Antonioli, General Manager of the Mining Innovation Hub of Peru. And we will present you the panel members. Doris Hiam Galvez, she is the founder and author of The Design of a Sustainable Prosperity for Mining. Rebecca Illesca, former Minister of Mines in Ecuador and consultant of Equinoxial. Daniel Camac, welcome, Chairman of H2 Peru. And Tamiko Hasegawa, Innovation and Sustainability Manager of Anglo American. Thank you, Pamela. Thanks for the invite to be part of this panel. It is really a great opportunity. I wanted to start with the last word of Seti's last paragraph. Opportunities. We talk a lot of opportunities in the circular economy, in tailings that still have high grades, but there is also a word when we start to have this kind of conversation is transformation. And we cannot overlook transformations that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they were slower than now, and now we need to run. So we have opportunities and we have accelerated transformations. What are those main challenges that are hindering us to make use of these opportunities? And in the face of these accelerations, in the changes and in the paradigms, let's start then with Doris. What are those barriers or challenges we are facing? Thank you, Pamela, and for your question. I think that the first challenge is not knowing the forecasts or projections of the minerals needs for this energy transition. All the forecasts are not correct, we have not forecast the technological aspects that occur now that change those trends. So first, all the forecasts or predictions are not a reality. Energy transition is very slow, and it's been always like that for many reasons. And regardless of energy transformation, artificial intelligence is accelerating much more quicker, and we need those minerals for energy transition or digital economy. The second challenge is not related to the environment, but it's infrastructure. For instance, the e-vehicles, the electrical vehicles, doesn't move forward because there is no infrastructure. Tesla cars or vehicles are not the best. They are very beautiful, nice, but they have their infrastructure to be recharged. Silicon Valley has that. We have some infrastructure for that, but if there is no infrastructure, we cannot move forward. And thirdly, I think that ah, we need very urgently the minerals. And I think that we will not be able to supply these minerals on time. We do not have 30 years to develop new mines. We need to produce those minerals now. And statistics show that there is a gap for 2027 for copper, and that goes down, and the demand still goes up, and this gap keep on growing. And for 2035, we will not be there. So what do we need to do? We need to maximize whatever we have. We need to make use of it at its maximum capacity. It's not 10%, 25%, but it's even more of, and everything take us to transformation on how we do things. If we do the same, still do the same, we will not be there. So this is a region of transformation, the way we do mind, the way we think, and everything. Thank you. Yes, we need to innovate things to make things differently because we will be needing that. Rebecca, from your experience, SETI talked about the influence of geopolitical changes. What barriers do you see in that field? Thank you, thank you. This is an honor to be here in Perumin. I've been in other fairs. Thank you for the invite, Jose, Pamela. For me, it's a great honor. Yes, I would like to congratulate you because we are more women in the panel. This is a male-dominant industry, and this speaks very good of Perumin. Regarding your question on the challenges we're facing, we've been talking about in the recent years the opportunity, the energy transition. What pushes us or drives us is to rethink how we can make a responsible extraction and sustainable over time. We also, in Latin America, what the previous presentation was saying, we talk about over 40% besides the minerals in Latin America, and this takes us to have this urgent conversation on how to articulate between the potential of responsible mining industry and to be able to engage in this global challenge, and also to share this through a development that needs to be sustainable with the communities in the land and the companies. So I think that governance is the biggest or one of the biggest challenges that we have. The timing of the companies, the technical schedules are not compatible many times with the political times. And this is where we get this gap on the temporality. We do not meet the needs, and we will not be meeting the need of the minerals the world needs. So being Latin America, the continent that provides these minerals. So regarding political stability, of course, affects these projects. And this is why I also mention and come from the public administration. This is my experience. I always talk and say that we need to make politics regardless of the political problems, and to do mining is a long term. It took 14 years to start, and we shouldn't think about short-term policies, but there needs to be a social society and citizens conversation and all the stakeholders around these industries. And I would like to say as well that one of the problems that we face regarding geopolitics, we were talking about illegal mining, and this is a very complex problem, and it's affecting the whole region. And possibly, and the Lacan secretary talked about some regulation, some standardized crimes, but taking this Lacan proposal, we should also think about some regulations on the tax impact, to share some regulations in common. And this is a win-win situation for everyone. This is a business, but the tax pressure exerted by some countries like Argentina, as we talked today, this could not be equalized by other countries like Peru and Chile. And I can see, not because the large this big convention, but in Ecuador we are still learning from you all. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. It is sometimes difficult to see the geopolitical problems and to add this a long-term concept. Daniel is highly experienced in this renewable industry. You've been building this green hydrogen. What are the barriers you see or challenges you see from your field? Yes, thank you for the invite first. Honestly, I am a little bit more optimistic in this energy transition. When you review the forecast and the investments in decarbonization, it has increased a lot if we compare it with the previous decade. It is true that in 2024 and specifically 2025, the pace of investment in decarbonization rhythm has decelerated. We are in this pressure and disappointing period of time, but as emerging industries and emerging societies, like has happened in other cases, we continue moving forward in the following years. The green hydrogen is a leverage of decarbonization. This is one of the 5 axes that exist: renewable energy, storage. Hydrogen, I think that in the following years will take a more important role. And to tell you the truth, Peru has experience in hydrogen, and many do not know. Peru produces hydrogen with hydrolysis procedure here in a plant, and they produce explosives for the mining industry. And it's the largest operation of hydrogen in the world. There are other operations that are still in development, but Peru is a clear example that there are some industry sectors that will play an important role in decarbonization. Mining is taking big steps. This decarbonization in reducing emissions to 30% by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050. They are achieving this in a very easy way because mining is able to decarbonize it by 30% with a green contract and renewable energy contract. And in that way, we are able to reduce 30%, but we could still do more. It's easy to reduce emissions at scope 2, but it's more difficult those at scope 3. I think that specifically in logistics, in transportation, in fact, the mining industry, like in steel and cement industry, they import a lot of raw materials that come to our ports, and they will go to each of the mining operations, and they will produce liquid fuels with a lot of high emissions. And I think that we are able to decarbonize this scope 3 that we all hope for doing. So Daniel is challenging to see that scope 3 that needs collaboration in an urgent manner. And Tamiko, Sustainability and Innovation Manager of Anglo American. So you are representing this large-scale mining. How do you see this from this large-scale mining? These barriers to be able to support in the transformation, to make this energy transformation, and at the same time to be supplier of the sustainable world.
No solo la diversidad del panel en género, sino la diversidad en puntos de vista, ¿no? Y como hemos visto por la presentación de panorama de SETI, la solución requiere justamente esa diversidad y esa innovación. Desde mi lado, que lidero sostenibilidad e innovación, me gustaría resaltar 2 retos con esas aristas, ¿no? Para poder destrabar el potencial minero que hemos visto muy alto y de exploración, no solo necesitamos ser requeridos, ¿no? Tenemos muchas ponencias y muchos estudios de cómo los minerales críticos van a ser requeridos para esta transición energética, sino que tenemos que lograr evolucionar a ser un sector querido, valorado. Y esta reflexión, la verdad, la he tomado de Rohitesh Darwan, que es el jefe del Centro Internacional de Metales y Minerías, del ICMM, que dice cómo pasamos en Spanglish de ser required a ser wanted. Tremendo reto, ¿no? Tremendo reto para el sector minero, generar esa confianza. Y eso es sumamente clave, ¿no? Desde mi gorro, digamos, de directora del Instituto de Ingenieros de Minas del Perú, uno de los eventos que van a escuchar más a partir de hoy, que lo vamos a lanzar esta tarde, es el GES. Quizás lo han visto, GES 2026. Son las siglas de Encuentro Internacional de Gestión Social y Sostenibilidad. Es un encuentro que reconoce el poder y la innovación social que hemos generado en minería por esa larga historia, digamos, con altos y bajos que nos han llevado a ser innovadores socialmente, pero también reconoce que este esfuerzo para lograr confianza va más allá de un sector, ¿no? Es un encuentro que lo organiza el instituto, pero lo organiza pensando en el bienestar del país. Será además en agosto 2026 un momento crítico para nuestro país, ya con nuevas
for our country with new authorities after the elections, and I think that it will be this important message of generating trust. Now, thinking about innovation, I think that the pace that we are innovating has to be accelerated. From the Perumin hub and my role as the organizing committee yesterday, I gave a presentation on how to go from circular mining to regenerative mining. We need to keep on evolving. We need to keep on innovating. But I think we need to take a positive look at it. And to wrap up my comments, when I started my participation at the hub, it was very unbalanced. All of the initiatives and ideas that we had in terms of technology or mining 4.0 versus shared value. But along with Pamela, we insisted and kept on insisting, and now I am really pleased to see how we have achieved the balance and the acknowledgement that innovations, ideas, and shared value are just as important as technologies. And the words that we have shared in this panel are a proof of that. We need to keep on advancing, but we need to accelerate the pace. Again, we need to go from circular to regenerative and other concepts. The mining sector, ultimately, it's a big ally. I know that many of these technologies are created outside of the mining sector, but the mining sector is bringing along these technologies to implementing them. And in terms of social innovation, I think we are the pioneers or trailblazers in creating this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tomiko. I would also like to invite everyone. Today we're going to announce the winners of Perumin Hub at the Camilo Ceballos room. So this is, innovation for transformation. Then the next question is the really tricky question and hard question, because we say that we need to act fast, that we cannot afford to waste time. But our sector is a harsh sector, sometimes a slow sector. It's a traditional sector, but we also need to say that it is successful. And as long as it is successful, it is also hard to change. So what I would like to do in this question is that you all leave with a clear idea of what happens if we don't change. What does it mean if we don't accelerate the pace? What would be the impact of just staying in the status quo and not changing things? Doris. Well, for the first question, I talked about the challenges, but my panel members talked about solutions. So now I will talk a little bit about one solution and then answer your question. So what happens if we don't move forward? Of course, we are going to emit more. I don't talk about climate change. The impact to climate change, the impact will be much higher. There will be uncertainty, there will be fear, and maybe crisis that will push to do things differently because there's no other alternative. It's as simple as that. But because all of you are promoting your own conferences. I think we came here to talk about our own congresses and conferences, and because I said that society urgently needs critical minerals, for instance, copper. And if we don't, by 2035, we should not do the same. We need to change. We cannot keep on doing the same thing. We need a radical change on how we do things, how we do mining, how we think, how we make decisions, how we collaborate. And it has to do with people, with us. And it also depends on how fast we move together. And that's why Peru, I wanted to invite everyone. Peru is receiving the World Mining Congress, will be the host of the World Mining Congress on June 24th, which is the the day of Interaimi next year. We are doing that because that is a rebirth. That reminds us that everything is reborn. It is a call to be reborn, to do things differently in the sector. Of course, we have a very strong participation of Silicon Valley, UK, Saudi Arabia. The world is coming to Peru on June 24th, and we are going to celebrate the Interaimi, and we're going to have an opening keynote with the World Authority on Change. So all of the participants will actually go into the conference, will be open to challenge what we do and ready to explore new ways of doing things just in the outset, at the beginning of the conference. And my dream is that the attendees will come and then we'll return home thinking differently, to do things differently, so that we can all really move towards the right direction and to deliver the critical materials that are needed in the world in 5 years, 10 years, because we don't have any more than 15 years. Well, yeah, there is a sense of urgency and the need of building trust. Rebecca, what do you think? Former public officer, public servant, what happens if we don't build this trust? Thank you very much. From the public sector, of course, we never generate trust. So, that's a common thing. It's hard to achieve. Unfortunately, in Ecuador, in the past few years, just for you to have an idea, in the past 5 years, there have been 25 vice ministers of mines. So it is almost impossible. It is wild. It is very difficult to have a medium-term, not even a long-term policy. So it's a challenge, and I don't think it only happens in Ecuador. It happens in Peru and in other countries. We have gone through social and political instabilities. It is important to deal with them in a very responsible way, and I think this is one of the challenges that we have as a region, where the geological risk, I think, is controlled. I think that in all of the panels, we talk very little about geological risk. It's clear we do have a lot of potential, but, if we think about world-class sustainable mining projects, it goes through policy change too. It goes through the high complexity of getting all the permits and red tape, and also the community engagement. So a few years ago, I think about mining maybe more than I should. I'm always thinking and rethinking. And in this reflection, and thinking about this, we created a project at the University of Ecuador, where I am working currently. This is a mining energy social innovation lab. And so I created this with a group of young people, because in Ecuador there's many questioning about the social and economic impact of the industries. And so I see that one of the issues that we have worked on, and that we are working very hard on, is first to listen to the to others. I think I love talking about mining. I go to every single conference that I get to, but I think we also need to learn to listen to the other voices, the other divergent opinions and doubts. I think we need to learn how to do that. On the other hand, we also need to have, I always talk to the new authorities that come in. I don't know if it happens here. Everybody wants to reinvent the wheel. No, we don't need to do that. It's better to have bad policy that we already learned to work with than, having everything new and constantly changing and companies having to face new things all the time. This is constantly a concern of companies. We're constantly creating new policies, new laws, and in the end, what it does is to just delay timelines, to not make streamlining of processes. And then finally, to wrap up, I just want to say that we need to work so that we can align with the global challenge of what the world needs from us. But how do we see ourselves as Latin America? We think that we don't have the capacities already developed within our countries. The youth, they are not getting into the careers that are related to, these industries. Women, girls, young girls, let alone them, they don't. There's the gender gap in the STEM careers is still big and throughout the value chain. So it is important to build capacities, to train. I admire and I love to be in this convention. This is the perfect example of how the industry should work. The mining industry should promote development, and that's what it's about. It's not just, operators and companies, but throughout the value chain. But are we really prepared in our country to really have these difficult conversations from wherever we are in the value chain? I doubt it. Thank you. Excellent comments. Rebecca, you talked about the academia and the youth, and I think it's so important that that they are aware of the role that they have to fulfill in making that mining to deliver what is required. Maybe we still have to close many gaps. Daniel, how about you? What if we don't incorporate the scope 3? What will happen? Well, I think that we are still far from really going into the net zero goal. We are way below the 2 degrees. I think that in the end, we're going to be closer to the 3 degrees Celsius. So what we need to do to go to the net zero path is to reduce current emissions in 50% in the next 5 years. And definitely we are not going to achieve that. It's impossible. But along this way, I've always said that Peru has so many opportunities to make progress and to advance energy transformation, decarbonization of those sectors where it is still hard. There are some sectors that are good, environmentally speaking, but there are other sectors that are really responsible of the highest emissions, like the transportation sector, where low-emission hydrogen can play a very relevant role. And then also going back to Antonio Raimondi, said if Peru is not just sitting in a golden stool, it is sitting in a blue golden stool because of the natural gas and the green golden stool because of the renewable energy. So what we need to do is to be smart and intelligent and how to use and harness all that. We cannot pretend that gas will go to every single part of Peru. It's impossible. It's really inefficient too. There are some regions in Peru that have their own energies, their own sources that they can develop. Puno is a place where we can have a lot of hydro. Arequipa is a place where we can have a lot of renewables. You cannot pretend to massify solar panels in Lima, where we don't have a lot of sun radiation. You cannot pretend to develop renewable energies and solar panels in the jungle to provide energy to Iquitos because there is a lot of clouds and it rains all the time. And also, there is biomass. We cannot pretend to have a transmission line that will go all through the jungle when you have a lot of trees. So I think, Peru, I think we need to harness the resources that we have in each part of Peru. That's what actually will generate value and will help reach these other sectors that we need to maybe reduce emissions. And I think that that's what's missing, how to harmonize all of these sources and to develop future that is more sustainable, which is what we want. Excellent. It is clear now that it is not just a single solution. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We need to be strategic. We need to look at options. We need to have a more mining, more complex mining. Tamiko, what happens if we don't change? Thank you, Pamela. Well, maybe if, just to give a different look at this, Peru, I think definitely has an opportunity. We have already talked about the mining wealth that the country has. If we add, the wealth of solutions that we have, nature-based solutions, we have a huge potential. Solar, wind, in the Amazon of Peru, Peru can, but also Peru has to do it because we do have high vulnerability indexes and rates. We need to understand the physical risks that we face with climate change. There's data from the Ministry of the Environment that shows that over 60% of the population will be strongly impacted by rains and floods. And so it's not just that the country can do it because it is, rich in terms of mining, but it has to. It is a responsibility vis-a-vis the Peruvians, and because of our characteristics, because of our infrastructure, because of our, human characteristics and ancestral features, we do have these high vulnerability rates. So I combine both. If we thought of as a, ranking, Peru is not a highly emitting country of GHG, but Peru does have the opportunity of being top of the list in providing a solution to a challenge, which is a global challenge. But if we add also that we have this global challenge, I think Peru will be strongly affected. We need to combine both, not only the potential and the opportunity, but also our duty, the duty that Peru has of playing a relevant role in the solution. This solution, of course, goes beyond just the mining sector. Peru has committed to reduce by 40% the GHG in 5 years, by 2030. And being carbon neutral in 2050. That requires that all of the industries work on this, the society, the government, and I congratulate, and I would like to wrap up by thanking the interest on this forum. There's a full room. And so, I just want to also turn the spotlight back to you, not on us. Solution to climate change requires that each one of us works. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tamiko. It is, possible if we talk about this and we size this vulnerability, maybe we can create more empathy to understand how mining goes hand in hand with other sectors and how together we can contribute to reduce the impacts of climate change. We have a third round. And I also want to talk about how multidisciplinary this has to be. So now I want to go to talk about action. I want you to talk about how you promote this transition. It's not just an energy transition, it is also the digital transition. There will be a lot more needed, and it is also two ways. We need the minerals, but this transition, energy transition and this digital transition helps us being more efficient. So I would like for you to share examples, projects, practices, policies, something concrete that you have seen from your roles where you're standing. What is something that you can share and that you think that obtained? Okay, I thought that we were done, so we go back to that. Given that minerals, there's. I was talking about the Congress that we're going to have. Of course, we have the talent, we have the energy, and we can do it. Now, I would like to ask you, raise your hand, please, those who believe that we can deliver these critical minerals in the next 10 years in a responsible manner. Please raise your hand. Who, in 10 years, who thinks we can do it? Well, okay, so what I did, it worked. In 5 years, how about 5 years? Who thinks we can do it in 5 years? Well, the challenge that we have for the Congress is in 5 years. We need to start making a difference in 5 years, measuring then in 10 years, because we only have 15 years, that's it. So my contribution is really to create a platform to grab this challenge and to work together to start a movement so that this sector is reborn, to be wanted, as she mentioned, not because we are not wanted anywhere, so we need to be wanted. I mean, they want us because we're, nice and we can reconnect, but when we start doing our work, it doesn't work. So my personal contribution is that I have been working for 20 years. I've been scratching my head thinking why the gap, between wealth and poverty in these regions is so high. Why this gap is so big in this region? And I think, Canada, Australia, Peru, South America, all of them, the engine of economic growth is energy, oil and gas and mining. When the main engine of growth is something that depletes or something that can run out. I mean, not everyone can work in this sector, first of all, so not everyone can have big salaries. And then, for instance, in Africa, you can see it very clearly. It is so low that they have no other choice but resort to corruption. And it is similar everywhere. It is the same thing in Canada, in the rural and indigenous First Peoples. There's a lot of poverty. It's the same thing in Australia. So not everyone gets to be part of this wealth. So I've been scratching my head for so long that I'm losing my hair. So I've developed a method that is known designing sustainable prosperity. Designing sustainable prosperity. So yes, everyone here has mentioned this is a regional solution. How to diversify the region when mining is actually booming, not when it is depleting. But that is completely changing the image of mining, of not being wanted to being welcome, because it then turns into a catalyzer of social sustainable prosperity. Now it's more of a paternalistic approach. You want water, I'll give you water. You want this? No, it's not based of empowerment of local people. So I think to empower, we need to all work together for the prosperity of the region, designing what is best for the region. I mean, I can talk forever about this. That's my passion. But if you want to talk more, you can find me somewhere else. There's a lot of that on LinkedIn. And I have a lot of information, but it's, diversifying the economy to create sustainable societies. And, it has science-based, and it is a holistic solution. It's a systemic solution. It's water, mining, agriculture. It's a system. It's not just temporary trends, batteries and I don't know. Yes, I've heard Doris firsthand, and I think that's the engineering part of sustainable prosperity. So please look it up. It's amazing. And then for next Perumin, we need to ask the same question and see who raises the hand to see if we are already wanted. We can see how things change. Rebecca, from your role, you can tell us maybe about a role or any course, something that is actually contributing to this transition. Thank you. I think that all of us who work in mining and public policies, I've never really wanted to be wanted or loved. So I've been struggling for a long time to have responsible mining in our countries. But this is a challenge that has taken me. I've done many things. I have worked on mining for many, many years in strategic sectors in Ecuador. And there are many things that, at some point, I think beyond the goal, I think there's many things that I've learned throughout the way. And that is very valuable when you see that along the way, there's things that lead us to think and to actually consider where we're going. And that sometimes is more valuable than the goal that we set at first. But we have gone from thinking that we couldn't, extract minerals in Ecuador. There was a prohibition. We have changed several things. And now, and I like this very much because I've been talking about this many years. It's not that we have achieved it. I am a lawyer. So, lawyers, we always think first on the policies and then looking at how to enforce them or has to enforce them. But it is important to think about the process. The law, the mining law, we have a specific law for the Amazonic jurisdiction, and where we have 60% of the royalties to the communities. And in the case of the Amazonic jurisdiction, and then by law also, we have the obligation of hiring the services 70-30 in mining, oil, electric projects, and 80-20 in the Amazonic jurisdiction. So I feel very proud that we have done this change. I also want to say that in practice, it's not enforced. It's very, it's not really enforced. That's a challenge. However, creating this law that forces companies to have this conversation with the communities so that we can incorporate more people into this industry, to me, it's the only way out that we have so that we can really reach the goals. If all of the companies, and that is not a responsibility of the state. Of course, it's also, the industry itself that we need to have productive chains and to incorporate more actors within this industry. I think it is the only way that we can be wanted in this industry. If the cake is only distributed out between the state-owned companies, the communities will feel that they don't have a piece of that cake. So it is necessary that communities are part of these processes. We need to be transparent in what we do. We need to have accountability and transparency in the use of the resources so that we can also generate trust. Part of achieving these goals is that communities and the citizens and everyone who is part of the industry and those who are not will trust in this industry. And this is what we have been working a lot in our countries, and well, for me in Ecuador. So I will insist on training and capacity building because it is important that we have more young people working in this industry. In Ecuador, we see how, at least in the oil, sector, young people, they don't want to study any careers related to hydrocarbons. But this is a mistake. We need to start having more studies, more numbers, knowing how to incorporate public policies, and also the community engagement. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Daniel, maybe you can give me one concrete example from your role to contribute to transition. Well, when I decided to create Acción Peruana Hidrógeno in 2021, it's because I am firmly convinced that hydrogen will play a prominent role in decarbonization of the economy. So today, H2 Peru has approximately 80 members. These are companies from the energy sector, from the hydrocarbon sector, from the mining sector, from the cement sector, from the transportation sector. And we have been building this ecosystem. Now, many people talk about hydrogen. In 2021, I was the only one talking about hydrogen, really. But we have made progress. We not only have created this ecosystem where everybody can understand the actual benefits of developing the industry of hydrogen, because hydrogen, for us, it's like a carrier. It's a carrier that will allow to have a green electron or a molecule to different sectors where they will not get directly. This is what hydrogen does. So we have developed a legal framework already that was approved last year in March 2024. We have also given another decisive step today. Before coming to this panel. We signed an agreement with the regional government of Arequipa and also with the sponsorship of the British Embassy, the British government. They are giving us some funds to complete all of the studies to develop the hydrogen hub in Arequipa. So the regional government of Arequipa has also given 30,000 hectares for the companies who want to develop their hydrogen projects will have access to these hectares. And these are plots of land that are close to the ports. Matarani port, and obviously hydrogen is not going to be just for domestic consumption, but also because of the huge potential that Peru has, especially for renewable energies that are not being used today. We will be able to export hydrogen. So just for you to have an idea and the size of this. And today, and probably Cesar will talk about this in the next panel, there's over 30,000 watts from different renewable energies that cannot be used because there's no demand of that. And hydrogen is precisely that demand. Peru is one of the few countries that could have a supply of hydrogen in the next 2 years and really applying these renewable energies and to complement what natural gas is already doing. So Peru has that strength. Unlike other countries in the region where they have had to use the renewable energies for domestic consumption. But Peru has a huge potential that is there. We are talking about 30,000 watt projects, and our consumption is not even 8,000. So, that's the strength that Peru has. That is what we need to start emphasizing, prioritizing, and this is what we are trying to do at H2 Peru. All the studies that we have conducted show that Peru has been recognized in some studies, and Peru can generate low-emission hydrogen at very competitive prices. So I think we're making a lot of progress. There's projects that have been announced in Arequipa, projects that even some are, approved environmentally, and I think that in the next few years there will be some news coming. I cannot talk about that because obviously these are projects that are being done privately, but I'm pretty sure that all of these will become public. Some projects that will, be on the pipeline in the next 2 years. So, I'm very happy that we signed this agreement with the regional government of Arequipa today. Congratulations. Thank you also, Arequipa, for hosting us every 2 years. Tomiko, any concrete example? Yes, of course, Pamela. First, I love this conversation. It's quite balanced because we are talking not only about critical minerals and the need of them in the future, but also the ambitious aspiration of being wanted and welcome and valued. And so, of course, in Anglo American, we think about this trust. And we do have a sustainability policy, and it also works towards sustainable. We have water management, sustainable water management, nature, healthy environment. These are concrete examples. This is part of being a new operation. It started in 2022, and so we really wanted to use the natural wealth of our country. Quellaveco started with Scope 2 at 100% of renewable energies, both wind as well as solar. Our offices and our storages and warehouses in Moquegua are fed by solar energy. And I also want to say that we use this in everything we do. We have social projects, for instance, water treatment plants. They're also fed by solar energy. Of course, recognizing the natural contribution that the region of Moquegua provides. About wind power, in 2024, the use of wind power at Anglo American Quellaveco allowed to avoid the emission of thousands of equivalent CO2. And so, of course, we transform this. Well, this is 50,000, equivalent to 50,000 cars, or planting millions of trees and let them grow for a decade. These are examples of how we're working in renewable energies. In a recent event in London that was known as Climate Action, Anglo American participated in over 20 sessions. And again, this highlights our commitment to the agenda this forum brings along and the interest. And also, we talked about not only decarbonization, but the link that there is with water, integrated water management. At some point, of course, the Water Forum talked about these things, and also the link that it has with nature. But something that is not new, but I think we need to also have it very much in our radar is, was mentioned in this week, was adaptation. How, as a company, we need to understand a lot more vulnerabilities of the communities around us, our own vulnerabilities, and to integrate these plans and this resilience in our strategy. Secondly, and Rebecca mentioned, is transparency. Transparency is also part of our sustainability strategy. And then I also need to share a specific example, and we are very proud of that. We are implemented the first triple certification. We have made that institutions like Coppermark or ICMM to collaborate with another framework called IRMA, and that allows us to have the 3 certifications with a single auditing process. So it's just one single auditing to have Coppermark, IRMA, and ICMM. And this is something that allows us to have more transparency, to show, to show the good things that we're doing. As a mining sector, I think we still need to share more, to communicate more, and not be afraid of applying these kind of certifications that we have created ourselves. And we, really have given the rigorosity, but I think it's all towards transparency. So our role, it's not just furnishing critical minerals. I think that mining has evolved. Perumin, this Perumin is showing this. I think this is quite a diverse Perumin. It's not only in terms of the themes, in terms of audience, so diverse. And I think that's the future of mining. That's modern mining. We not only have a role as the producer of critical minerals, but I think we have a role in the stewardship of nature, water management, and promoting nature-based solutions and also adaptation, understanding a lot more the risks, because climate change, we're already feeling it, we're already seeing it. How are we going to adapt that? What are we going to how are we going to incorporate resilience in our plans? Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel. It's been quite rewarding to listen to you. I think this was a panel that was very honest. I really liked to hear also some difficult answers. I know that we are running out of time, but I think we're all aware that the challenge is big. Challenge is huge. Change and transformations are going at an accelerated pace. The political and geopolitical context is unstable. We are facing a changing environment, a changing context, and we're all increasingly vulnerable. We don't have to wait until the crisis. Of course, crisis is a moving factor, but we should not just be sitting there and waiting for the crisis to happen. We need to be more proactive. We need to be protagonists of change, but we need to have mining not in a traditional way. We need to be in the spotlight because we share value, we generate trust, and we add more people. And I think this is something that we have heard throughout the 3 rounds of the panel. Thank you very much. A big round of applause, and please stay in the forum for the next session.
Oui. Ouais.
Muchísimas gracias por su participación.
Thank you very much for your participation. It's been an extraordinary panel. There were so many things to reflect on for energy transmission and mining sustainability. Next, we invite you to a coffee break. We will take a 20-minute break. Thank you.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Please take your seats to continue with this forum and the streaming on real time on this energy transition forum. It's been aired by through the YouTube channel of Perumin. So now we will present the section on energy policy and competitiveness promotion of mining in Peru. So we will invite Carlos Herrera Descalzi, mechanic engineering, and has over 40 years experience in the electrical system of Peru, in executive positions, in industry, generation, distribution, transmission. Since 2018, he serves as the chairman of the board of the COS, the organization operating the electricity system nationwide, and is made up of all the electrical market of the Peruvian market, and also manages the dispatch of electricity and is in charge of the planning of the expansion of the electricity system. Thank you, Cesar. This is Cesar Butron Fernandez. Yes, I want to first make a disclaimer. When Jose Estel invited me, the president, to make this presentation, I'm going to give you some guidelines for you to include all the topics that we want you to address. It was a Word document, a 4-page long, with characters 11. So you imagine the amount of topics to address, but you see some things that are too many or they are still missing. You know who to blame about this. So having said this, let's start. First of all, and he asked me to talk about energetic policy. This is the current policy in Peru. You can read, it's very nice, but it's too generic. It's full of nice wishes. You find everything and you would like to do everything, but nothing is prioritized. I won't read this. I won't bore you with this, but if you keep on reading, it says to promote hydroelectric power, but you know that this cannot be done. So all of them talk about the same thing, but what is missing, if we talk or we think about the history of this, the energy policy in Peru, it's been mostly reactive. It started in the 50s, the hydropower plants, and we needed to put some hydroelectric operating diesel, and it keep on growing, these hydroelectrical plants. Then we get the natural gas, and the policy was revolving around natural gas, etc., etc. And now the last stage where we are at, and they are still reactive, it's the energy transition, the support to renewable energy production. This is a summary of the energy policy from our point of view, what we have experienced. There has not been a strategy to say this is what we want Peru to be. We want Peru to be exporter of energy, or we need to produce because we won't have any primary resource. We haven't done like other countries have done. France has said that, or has done that, they has based their nuclear power, and they are now harvesting what they have started. So let's see a little bit about the history of how this regulation started regarding the energy system in Peru. So let's go back to 1955. It's kind of the registry. So where it's above the line, it's a trend to be more centralist, the state doing everything. And the section under this line is the private investment in the market. So you can see that in 1955, it all started with a system focused on private investment in the market. We have the law on electrical industry. There were very entrepreneurships and businessmen around the country. In Arequipa, we have the SEAL that come from German origin and other companies. And then what happened in 1972 during the military government make all the business state-owned, and we have an integrated market, so the state will do everything: rural electrification, distribution, research, etc. So this has been for a long time, and we got to a crisis that led to do something else. During Belaúnde's administration, he didn't change that model sound based on Electroperu, the state system. And in 1992, you'll remember those old here in the room. So we have this drought season, and generation and transmission both had 20-30% rationing of the service. You remember, right? At specific time of the day, electricity was cut off, and you will use some small generator set for the small businesses, and that's how we worked at that time. And this crisis with the regulation and the consensus of Washington brought this electrical concession law. This is a law on concessions, so the state will keep the power, the faculty, and the obligation to provide public services, but it will give this to the private sector to do that through concessions. This is the basic idea of electrical concessions. And in 2004, we had the first crisis on this model. What happened? We have this 700 megawatts in the system that were removed from the system, and they have no contract, and these were removed by distributors. So they have no contract. The payment chain was broken, and that crisis and has its own reasons and origin, and I will elaborate a little bit more on this later. And at that time, it was discussed whether to go back to the state managed. Some said that it was better the state to manage this or look for the market. And the Congress of the country created a pro-inversión organization, and we had a palliative law, that is the law number 28447, and this led to law number 28832, and this is the main regulatory entity that legislate the main activities in the energy sector. And this law allows the distributor transmitter rates are not set by the regulator or the regulating entity. So this law had its effects, its changes, and it started to work. It worked okay. And after some time, we had the last change, law number 32249, and based on what is proposed in this regulation law, it is going back to the state model, because they are granting power to the distributor, and this is how it was disorganized. Let's see some data. You can see in 1992, that was the Peruvian system. It was not one electrical system. There coexist three subsystems: the north, southwest, and northeast. You could see capacity installed of 1,538 megawatts, and now it can provide continuously. And how these laws have evolved, we can see the evolution on the right. We have a robust sound system that covers coast and the highlands, where the Peruvian population is located, and we have 14,000 megawatts of installed capacity and a maximum demand of 7,394. So the investments were made, the system has worked, and maybe some of you remember, but we don't remember anymore this permanent rationing of the service. This is rationing needs to be constant. We have cutouts. There are some failures, and these failures needs to be solved and improve the capacity to react to those cutoffs. And this is the evolution of our demand. This system has been increasing over time, except during the pandemic time. We have this drop in the curve, and the trend is a permanent trend. You can see from the 2012, 2014, 2016, since 2008, has increasing trend, and that after that it gets to a plateau. And in 28 we were increasing at 2.8%. After some political changes, we have the Conga effect. We need to say it. Investments ran away, and we went down to 6. And as a last information that I can share with you, the accumulated growth so far up to last week compared to the same period of last year, it doesn't get to 3%, but 2.7, 2.8%. This is how we are growing. And this is not good for the country's economy. The economy says we need to grow over 70% to reduce poverty. And we are growing below what we're supposed to do. And how are the investments made? You could see this information prepared by the National Society of Mining, Petrol and Energy. So in 1992, we have the law on electrical concessions, and from 95, 96, we can see results. There are the investments in, well, the one in blue are the generators, the one in green, the transmitters, the orange one, distributors, and the gray one are the rural electrifications. So the result on the electrical concession law, it was not only because of the framework of this law, but the privatization process included commitments to invest, and the generation capacity starts to increase, to grow, and it started to reduce, because in those years we have this non-contract in 2004, because the generator distributor tariff or rate was set by Osidermin, and there was a constant conflict between the generator and Osidermin, said that the rates were not real, and the energy produced, half of it were needed or were obliged to sell it to the regulated market, half of what Osidermin said. So half of their sale had controlled prices, so they needed to bring investments. So investments started to decrease, and there were some small changes as this law 28832 and law before it, and we had a great amount of investment, and this made this to meet this high decrease in the country, increase of the demand, and this was served by this investment. And the investment is almost the same, is a vegetative, little by little, as it increases population, the demand, etc. And the transmission growth, it's important to see how the regulatory model affects this growth. On the first years of the reform, the transmission grew. There was the privatization, everything in the south. So a private company entered and invested, and a very important example on how a regulation does not work. The transmission didn't stop. You could see in 2001, 2003, transmission. Because the model, the tariff, was set by the regulating entity, and the tariff or rate was reviewed every 4 weeks, and it was reviewed downwardly. So through that model, Oceanermin, who regulated that rate, no transmission line was built during that time. This is why this latest law is this model that we have, this BOT model, where the rate is set by the competition, the competitors, the bidders are engaged. We have a 30-year contract, and they will ensure what they offer. So you start seeing an increase on the investment in transmission. Distributor is almost a permanent behavior, and then we have the cyclic behavior again. They start investment starts to go down, and each of those has its own explanation. For generation, what happened is that there was a major supply. It is not an oversupply; it's a larger reserve, but commercially was a surplus of supply. There was not enough demand for all these cycles that were installed in Peru, and these cycles needed to compete amongst them because they were not be dispatched fully. And if they were not dispatched, they need to pay for the ship or pay, take for pay of the gas, and they will not get their costs. And where there was oversupply, an excess or surplus of supply, we need to recognize where we were increasing at 8.5%. The ministry said that this is not good. There is an acceleration of this supply. We need to generate special cases to bring more investment because we don't want to be that dependent on gas. We need to build hydro power plants. So, breaking this model, they started to build these hydropower plants, and we have these two big hydropower plants. And on the same time, to be aligned with the renewable energy, we start having these bidding processes of renewable resources. These are launched, and we will get investments both for renewable energy, and this demand starts to get slower. It will go down from 8.5 to 6, and these two effects, the result was there was an excess of supply, and clearly with that surplus, the generators stop investing. So they stop investing from 2017, 2018, 2019. Investment stops, and it is just starting to increase again. This is regarding investments. And now let's see sources of energy. So you see clearly that Peru is an hydropower country. And in 2004, we had natural gas coming to the coast, and now we have that the gas installed capacity it's more than the hydropower infrastructure, and they dispatch 24 hours a day. We have diesel whenever there was an emergency. You could use fuel, and then we start having renewable energy. This is the evolution on the making up of our electricity generation matrix or grid. The marginal cost, as you know, it's the cost to produce one additional unit. So this is the price that we need to sell. This is a balanced price to have some profit. So these are all the years in 1993 since the law on electrical concessions that create this concept on marginal cost, and these lines in different colors are the different months within a year. So clearly we can see that there are differences between the years, minor changes. There are some seasons where the marginal cost is too low. From 1999, investments started to come in on the law on the concession, the electrical concessions, and in 2004, we start to have these spikes in some of the months of that year. So this is because the generators stopped having investments because the regulated costs were not not meet the requirements on the marginal costs, and they needed to dispatch with diesel, and this made the cost higher. And in 2008, this is a important event. The natural gas pipeline was congested, and we needed to dispatch with using diesel, and you could see the effects on this diesel dispatch. And this is a proof of stopping or having this surplus of supply. You will get to this $10 per watt hour, and there is an additional option to use gas, but the real effect was that the marginal costs were that low, $10 per megawatt hour, and we start running out of this supply excess, and there is a special phenomenon occurring, some stoppage of the pipeline, and since natural gas is in the game, this will make to have these exceptional peaks. This is the daily load. We have renewable energy, water, natural gas, and nothing else. The coal from the state has disappeared many years ago, and diesel is only used for special occasions. This is our energy matrix or grid, and you can see that this matrix is very clean. So besides on these rare bidding processes, so we have the first four, and the marginal cost was with and without gas price declaration. At the beginning, you could see that very high costs are being paid. Those companies offering that price, they are in the correct industry. That was the cost they offer like that. That's the model of this Supreme Decree 1002, and this allows us to do this. And why they paid with that anticipation is they were very high. So for my own opinion, it was an advance. Peru has not this excess, and there were no problem related to high prices. So what I can tell you, since this model started, because it's not longer applied, this rare prime, that is this charge that is put on the rate to the users, we needed to pay some extra $1.9 billion to bring these renewable energies where they were too expensive.
And now let's see a very important discussion. And we are all thinking about the grid and the energy transition. This is data from the Ministry of Energy and Mines. What is the share of electricity generation of SEIN?
Es solo 6.
It's only 6.02% in the whole energy sector. That is just a fraction of the whole country, because there are other activities. So only in the energy sector is 6.02%. If we take into account the others, who are the others? I already mentioned this morning. Transportation, of course. They say that, it's moving, but there's nothing really concrete. But the highest generator of greenhouse effect, even more than transportation, is the use of soil. Illegal logging, legal logging, but something that is completely inadmissible, which is illegal mining. It destroys hectares and hectares of Amazonic lungs, oxygen-generating trees. And so it's, of course, not only electric sector. There's other problems that are much more serious, and they are not being solved. So I think this whole persecution, all of these events and laws, they all talk about renewable energy and transition, but you will only resolve 6.2% of the problem. So we need to have a policy as a country, and in this energy policy, we need to see how are we going to solve the other sectors that also generate greenhouse effect. That's something that has not been, they don't talk about that too much. They tell me that I am not a friend of renewable energies. No, I'm just a friend of the truth. So this is what our system has looked like. And so let's see what's coming in the future. And then I also have to give another disclaimer. It's just a methodology. Everything that I'm going to show, because this is from the COES, is based on 10-year forecast. And this just because of two simple reasons. Because this is based on the preparation of the transmission plan, and the law says that when we have to do a transition plan, we need to look at 10 years into the future. The second one is conceptual, looking at anything that's later than 10 years, we need a crystal ball. So it may be that we see some things into the model, but having said this, only we are looking 10 years into the future. Let's see what's next. Now we can see how the demand is going to grow in the next 10 years, all the way to 2036. And then there's two scenarios. You can see in the mid-size scenario, it's 3% for the next 10 years, and the optimistic scenario is only 4%. And why so low? Where is everything that is being, talked about in this convention? Mining is the main driver of the demand of electricity of the country. Well, I will explain to you. When we do this forecast, we ask all of the companies that exist in the country to send their forecast of when and how much they're going to consume in the future. And this is based in what the companies send. The mining companies and all the other companies, they send all their forecasts, and this is how we get the number. And so the conclusion is that nobody really sends big, major projects right now. There's no major project. They're not considered because they talk a lot about the whole portfolio. But how many of these are very concrete, that the owners themselves really don't tell us that maybe for 2030, if we have 90 more megawatts more, no, nothing exists. So what we are left with is just vegetative growth. And then the other percentage is just maybe some expansion projects, expansion projects in mines and industries that may go up to 4%. So our mission is, we think that it's not going to be more than 3%, because we are under 3 right now, and then the electoral year is coming. And so, of course, everybody will wait until the election is over, what's happening, and then to see how the new government reacts, and then, of course, until they decide to do something. And then let's see that the Virgin shows up, and Virgin Mary shows up, and then maybe, let's say, investments go up and skyrocket. Well, they will start consuming electricity, and so we're talking about 6 years from now on, 6 years from now. And this is most likely where this scenario will apply, only 3% of growth. So this is, good news for the sector, and we'll see why. But this is also bad news for economy. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Jose again, told me to talk about electromobility and... So the question is, are we taking into account electromobility and the new demand for electromobility? Yes. How much? 0. Yes, 0. But it's not a joke. It's just there's not enough data to actually include it. There's no massification of electromobility in our system. And I just want to talk about mining companies, and Jose has declared yesterday, again, Jose, sorry, but there are 50-something electrical train cars, but it doesn't really move the amp perimeter. It's, the major consumptions, which are these huge trucks that you showed us. We asked you have projects to turn them into electricity? No, not yet. Nothing. So there's nothing. Massification of electromobility and, is electromobility without thinking into benefits. I don't think there's going to be much. Green hydrogen, and I'm sorry, Daniel, we see that it's very green. It's not, it's like in diapers. Probably it will come, but it will take its time. And, there's some projects that say they have given some hectares, but, this is the project that, they say that it's going to generate 6 gigabytes, and they have submitted their projects. But no, we don't really see nothing concrete yet. So electromobility and green hydrogen, they're not on this calculation in the demand forecast. Then there is one final slide on distributed generation. So we add also the supply here, and this is where we have all of the centrals that are being built so far. I don't think there's any other being built so far, but that's it. There's nothing more. And if we do have a lot of projects in the pipeline, but the fact that they are concrete, no. So we are going to assume that nothing is going to be built. And what happens with the system and the fundamental premise is that we're taking several fundamental premises. We're taking the mid-size demand, and we are assuming that gas doesn't get to the south in the analysis period. This is the premise of the exercise. This is not a forecast or anything. So you can see here that the red line is the total installed capacity of the system, and the green line is the growth in the demand, and the blue is the efficient generation, which in simple terms is anything but diesel, and then renewables and natural gas. And so you can see with these centrals that are being built and that are going to get to 2027 and 2028, we start having issues next year. We have the green line and the blue line overlapping, and this means that in certain times of the year, the dry season, when there is fewer generation and certain times of the day, probably we will have to generate with diesel, because then we don't have renewable energies plus gas plus water enough. It's not enough. Another big conclusion here from this graph is that even if we don't build anything else, we don't have to do rationing. Of course, there shouldn't be any. So this is what we see, and that's why I was saying that renewable energies are not really getting to the speed and the pace that they should. There's many reasons for that, of course, and I will comment on them later on. This is the new accumulated installed capacity to look at the system without building more. And again, I highlight effective power, because these would be delivered with hydro or thermal. If it is given by thermal, like solar and wind, we will have a lot more installed capacity because of the variability. So 3,000 megawatts up to 2036. Even though growth is not big, of course, that's not a little investment, and we need to get it. Otherwise, we're going to have to use diesel. It's as simple as that. So now let's go to another exercise. What happens if the gas gets to the south? And gas gets to the south, I don't mean a gas pipeline. It can be, I don't know, via ships, or a pipeline on the coast, or the original pipeline, I'm not going to discuss that. But what would happen if the gas reaches the south? Let's think that it's going to be the shortest one, and it's not going to be before 2031. So if the gas reaches the south in 2031, there's 1,500 megawatts that will turn into natural gas, because that's the contract, and they will contribute to new efficient generation. And so these 2 gigawatts, if we do this, we don't need a lot more until 2036. And then this is a very, just determining factor for any investor. If the gas reaches south, there won't be any place for renewables. And if there's renewables, what are they going to do? What we're going to have? Low prices and oversupply. So this is a very important element in the decision-making process. This is something that should be solved. But during the current administration, we don't see any signs that it's going to be solved. Up until recently, it seemed impossible. There is a we really don't know if this is going to be completed or not. We have to forecast if there's no gas, what we have seen, and more diesel, or if gas reaches the south in a few years with diesel, and then again we will be at ease. So this is the perspective for the next 10 years. Now, let's look at the market. One thing is what I say, and then another different thing is the interest of measures. I see some of them that you are bored, but I have to explain it. The law says that whenever any agent wants to invest in a generation central or demand or transmission, it has to go through the COES, the COES Commission. They need to get the approval from the COES, and then only then can request the concession to do the activity. So anybody who wants to do something, they have to go through COES. And this is the EPO. You can see the amount of them. We don't even get to 8,000 megawatts of the maximum demand. And you can see we have 33,000 megawatts on projects that have been submitted. So, and then out of these, as you can see, hydro, nobody really wants to invest. They're expensive. It takes a long time. There's a lot of issues in terms of social, political issues. Gas, they don't know if it's going to be enough, because the generators don't decide to invest on thermal generation, and so the gas producer doesn't want to invest to explore and to develop more and to provide more gas. So, because this isn't sorted out, there are no new projects in cogeneration of natural gas. And then this is what's left. Geothermal, there's not a single project. If anybody's thinking about it, geothermal, they say it's important, it's good, blah, 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 but it's still expensive and there is a very high risk, and they have to it's geothermal, it's very far from us. And so we go back to solar and wind. And so this is what's coming. This is what's going to happen. It doesn't matter what the COES says or what anybody says. The only thing that we have in the future is have wind and solar centrals, power centrals, or power stations. Because I hear a lot of forum where they say, okay, how can we push the development of more and more renewable? But the market is taking this by itself. These are the only feasible options. And this is where we see that there are two scenarios, right? If we go to the mid-size, which is what we think, it means 6,600 new megawatts with wind and solar. You know that there's sun in the southern part of Peru, there's wind in Lima, and so that's the reality. If we want to grow more, you can see it's 12,000 megawatts that need to be built on time to prevent using diesel. So this is the situation that we have in the future. This is the only thing that is coming. And we think, this is what's going to happen. And so now we need to think, what are the challenges? What are the challenges for the electrical system? And of course, this is translated into investment on wind and solar power. You can see this graph, which is the actual production of a wind station in Talara. It exists in Peru, and this is data from a few years ago. This graphically proves what the main problem is. It's variable. It's very variable, highly variable. It's not as they told us that, yeah, maybe in the afternoon, yes, in the night, it doesn't. No, it's variable throughout the day, all throughout the day. But this graph, that has different, colors and lines, it has another complexity layer, which is the forecast of how much they will produce. Why is this important? I will explain. When COES in order to decide the operation COES every day has to forecast how the demand is coming, and it also needs to forecast how much generation will be given and delivered. So, sometimes it's easy because they will dispatch whatever the COES tells to the top of the capacity, so there's no problem of predicting how much to produce. But for this, you need to predict how much they will produce. And you can see here that the graph, black is what's actually produced. Blue is what the operator told us that they would produce, and then the red one is a study that we have done. But let's look at blue and black. You can see the differences between blue and black. It's notable differences, and this is what, okay. So COES has to deal with it, but if COES said, okay, they predicted that certain numbers were going to produce, and then that changes, and they need to respond, and they need to respond rapidly. And then for that, they need to have something to respond with. And this, it could be with solar, it could be with wind, and the theory says yes, because if they are located somewhere else, there's altitude, it's a different time. But it requires a lot of investment. And then, of course, those who have to respond on hydro and natural gas. So for now, we have enough of that. So these are the main problems here. I'm not saying that this is not unsurmountable and it cannot be solved, but this is something we need to solve.
Un problema. Solo se necesita las herramientas.
We only need the tools to do it. I have a friend who is an advocate for of a renewable, and then she tells me that solar is much more stable. Oh, really? Okay, let's look at this. This is real, actual data from a solar station, and it turns out that it's not as stable after all. It has its variation. Why? Well, because there's numbers, there's clouds. The cloud, goes there, and then you have a problem. And then production goes down, and then you can see it's not little. You can see the production goes down a lot. And this is very important for the production, because if the production goes down rapidly, I have to have something to respond with at the same pace. We need to have the charge ramps, and then also the... What do we do at night? Of course, we burn diesel. So those are the problems. Again, it's not that they cannot be solved. They can. But you can look at this solution. The cloud that goes and interrupts the production. You can see how much. 70% of the production in very few minutes. This is real data, actual data. I'm not making this up. So this happens when we have just a few solar stations in the south. And what's coming with the new law, the 32249, what's doing is to really refine the barrier only for solar. What's going to happen in the south is, in the south we're going to have photovoltaic solar-powered stations in the south. But let's think that we have 1 gigabyte, and then the cloud goes by, and it's going to go 300, 400 megabytes down. And then we need to be able to sort that out. So that problem, it needs to be solved. And that problem, just like anything in life, from the engineering standpoint, everything can be solved, of course. But then it's only about cost. How much does it cost? What am I going to give? So these are the problems that are, inherent to the nature of this resource. But then there's something else that has to do with the system. An electrical system, in order for it to be stable, of course, there's issues that can happen with the hydro plants, thermal stations too. But transmission lines, of course, sometimes they are out of service. If there is, I don't know, a mudslide or a thunder or something, there's always contingencies. So we need to understand how to deal with these consistencies. We need to have regulation of frequency and the regulation of the tension. First one needs active withdrawals of energy, and the second one needs reactive withdrawals. Don't even ask me what reactive energy, just trust me that we need it, okay? It's very complicated to explain, so don't ask me. So this is what we need. And then conventional renewable energies, we have a problem. They cannot help in regulating frequency, they cannot help a lot. So the first the first barrier in a problem with an electrical system is inertia. There's because of the first law of Newton, a body that is in movement, it tends to be in movement or idle. And so if the station detects that the frequency is going down, it immediately, automatically, and naturally goes into movement to compensate that. That's the first barrier of defense. Second barrier of defense is primary regulation of frequency. So in other words, this station opens the valve so that water comes in or gas comes in, produces more, and it compensates the variation. And this is automatic. This is, the systems of any central. And then the renewable stations, they don't have this capacity. I mean, they do have some capacity. Maybe, yes, they have a little bit of that capacity, but it's not an equivalent capacity. And actually, a photovoltaic panel, it cannot have inertia. And wind energy stations, they can have a little bit of capacity. They can control the amount of wind that comes in. They could give something. And with electronic systems and other systems, you can regulate the tension. I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but it has to be done. But this adds another layer of complexity to the operation. So what happened in Chile and Spain? That precisely, and it has to be clear so that they don't accuse me of slandering, it wasn't the renewable energies. It was something else that triggered this problem, and they had the outage. But because they had so many renewable energies, without those capacities, the system didn't hold it and just collapsed. This is what happened. I can go into details of each one of them because we have studied it in detail, but this is what happened. So this requires a solution, and this is a solution that should make everybody happy, because if the renewable energies, they can provide these services either with investment on storage systems or rapid reaction systems, like could be compressed air, anything you want, you name it. But if we have that, there's no problem. Renewable energies, they can come in with a complementary service, and then it can be anybody, and we won't have these problems as they did. But what we need is that the Peruvian legal framework demands that renewable energies also provide these services. Why am I saying this? Because our current law, all of the renewable energies systems are exempted from providing primary regulation of frequency. So they introduce variability, but they don't collaborate to control it. So this exemption that was given when they wanted to promote this, it should just be completely removed. They need to have this obligation. And then we have the latest law, 32249. We have the idea of creating a complementary services market. So they can provide it either putting batteries or any other mechanism that they deem convenient, or they can purchase it from somebody else that actually provides these services. So our warning is, first, climate change and everything, yes, the effect on the generation system is very little. And second, as only renewable energies are coming, then we need to be careful. And that also goes through adding more policies and laws, because otherwise we're going to have this. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, César, por...
Thank you very much, Cesar, for all this experience in this sector that are highly technical and economic as well. The need to hear the market for making decisions in investments. So next, we have the next panel that will be moderated by Rosa Maria Flores Arao, CEO from CALPA. We will invite our panel members, Carlos Herrera Descalzi, former Minister of Energy and Mines of Peru, Gonzalo Tamayo, former Minister of Energy and Mines, Miguel Figalo, Manager of Apoyo Consultoría Projects, and Nicolas Besic, Coordinator of Irensa Instituto and Professor of Economics. And we would like also to have César Butrón in the panel.
¿Cuántos micrófonos tenemos para ver si
How many microphones we have to see that we can share? Okay, Carlos and I will share this one, and one more microphone for Engineer Butron. Thank you very much. Yes, you will always intervene because that is you, and it's better you have the microphone close to you. So the presentation by Cesar has been very didactic and a very good one. I do not want to start discussing and giving an opinion because here I'm a moderator, not to share my opinion on the matter, but we have two former ministers of the sector that are highly knowledgeable and two experts as well in the electrical system, Miguel through Apoyo Institute and Miguel through Videncia Institute. So I'll give them the floor. The dynamic for this panel will be as follows, so that the whole room stay please, because you will be entertained until the end of the session. And just to put some order, each one of you will be free to share your opinion on the presentation in general terms presented by Cesar, and also to add on the first round with a question I would like to ask, because in the summary that Cesar has shared with us on the forecast for the following years, he has underscored a lot, both in the conservative scenario and a more optimistic scenario. We will be requiring in the medium term, if there are no investments made additionally, we will be requiring then in the low rainy season and in specific hours of the day, in peak hours, additional generation. If you have any suggestions on how to avoid this, but my question for all the panel members is if this needs to be prevented or avoided. So let's start with Carlos. I give you the floor. Thank you, Rosa Maria. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invite. Thanks for the invite, Cesar. A great presentation. But I'm going to stay with these two slides from what I've heard on his presentation. The backlog of Chile and Spain. This is what we are going to experience as well. This is what we expect if we are on the same path and stay on this same path. And next year, and I hope it is like that, if we have good news on how this will be managed in the future in the country, we will be seeing the results in the electrical industry 4 years from now. So we have these years to cover and address all these issues. And Cesar said that we are just will be depending on wind and sun. And he called for, if we are going to be depending on these two energies, they need to give the same energy as the other energies. So I think that the description that Cesar made was really clear. They create the problem, but there is no contribution to sort this out, and it is for others to solve. And this means, so in one of these stations for the electrical system, they have an impact, and I read the wind energy numbers. They get to zero. Their contribution sometimes is zero. The solar and wind energy, the contribution specifically during the night is zero. So someone needs to respond to that, and the ones responding are the hydropower and the thermal stations. So on the hydrothermal or the thermal station, it's at a high cost. They are not prepared to rise their power. This result in thermal dilation, and this will damage the machine life cycle. So what happens before these intermittencies that occur in the system? They didn't exist before. All the machines that participated in this generating park, some of those responded more agile and faster. So no charge was collected from anyone. So now we have players that causes a cost or an expense that is not being recognized. So the things that we need to do is that this cost needs to be recognized to prevent this kind of blackouts. So it is not fair to get the same price when the same quality is not provided. The product needs to be homogeneous for the price to be homogeneous. Okay? I think that this is something fundamental. Let's see other options there. We have gas and we have hydraulic. Gas has a big problem. Some 2-3 weeks ago, there was published in the newspapers. It is not a coincidence, but it was called for Peru Petro. Peru Petro invited an international consultant for an analysis what will happen with the electrical system, and we have gas for the following 10-12 years, and this doesn't mean that gas will run out or be depleted, but we need to start importing gas, and we start importing it. The calculation made, I think that it's kind of exaggerated the number they got, but it's going to be 5-to-1. Instead, the price will be 5 times what it is now. It will be a hard hit for the country's economy. So talking about the gas as well has a huge problem. The gas price, the current gas prices come from Camisea, and the gas reserves were proven, certified, and the one coming comes to get gas. And it's not the same when someone comes and they need to test where to put the bar. If we speak about Banco Capa's stick where there was gold, but we cannot have 37.4% royalties, no one will make an effort to try to find gas. If we expect gas generation in the future will be as Gamisea's level, we need to break this. And we are here not knowing, maybe perhaps we will find more, and maybe we won't find that much and not that fast. So maybe we'll be just staying with wind and sun energy or solar energy, and the other option will be the hydroelectrical power stations. And I think that Peru has a good option on this kind of energy. However, we need an action from other markets, from different markets. I know that it is expensive, but having a Mercedes and a Volkswagen, and a Volkswagen is a nice vehicle and it's a good vehicle, and I've had one for many years, but between a Mercedes and a Volkswagen, there are big differences. So what Peru wants for the future of its electrical system? So a Mercedes or a Volkswagen? Gonzalo, please. Thank you for the invite, and thank you to Jose and Rosa Maria and the members of the panel. We will be talking about some common views and maybe some others that are not that shared. So Ministry of Energy and Money will be kicked out if there is no electricity, so they need to provide supply in the electrical system. This is the priority. It's not the first one, but the priority, and how to build this security on the energy supply. It's difficult always, and we have this system to start including this interruptible system, and we need to guarantee, we need to secure the supply. We've discussed, we've heard discussion of the batteries, how they generate inertia, and there are other discussions on full renewables is the future, and we have our own park, and we will see our cost curve, and we have some combined cycles, and something happens, and we will just resort to diesel, $200. But I think the technology, and Carlos knows more about this. I'm an economist, and Carlos is an engineer, and engineer got a lot to say. Yes, we have gas. There's a possibility to use gas as a compensation mechanism for the variability in our system. We don't have incentive if there is no market where a gas generator could come in with an open cycle and solve part of the problems.
Estando en discusión, batería.
The solution is not provided. We have inertia batteries and diesel.
Creo que a través de mecanismos.
I think that through market mechanisms, we will be able to generate a space where we have additional sources.
Porque no hay muchas fuentes adicionales.
Where there is gas demands, there are not that much demand.
La propia variabilidad.
Using the same variability of gas consumption to compensate this, right? This is something easy to say, but we need to create this, and we need to create a market. And to create a market is not easy. Who demands, who offers, and this requires months, and we need to copy good practices.
Hizo César, y aquí sí voy a poner un comercial.
And another thing that Cesar mentioned, and please, if you allow me, Rosa Maria, also named as COES, COES, electromobility, distributed generation, electro-hydrogen. And COES will call for the consultants, and we raise our hands. And Cesar mentioned in the next 10 years, there is no electromobility. We made that calculation, our energy team. Why? Because the rationale behind it, we have the question to understand a little bit better. The regulator's question is: you consider electromobility, and if you do so, tell me in which bar of the system and at what period of time during the day. So this is sometimes, these questions are excessively theoretical, when we could see that those factors will not require, that needs to be considered in this simulation. But we, as consultants, it's an opportunity to explore mechanisms, how to try to convince the regulator that at least for now, this is not a significant source of to be worried about, but source to be worried about. And I shared what Carlos said. Our gas reserves, we know their evolution. However, unfortunately, I think we have time to make decisions, and that time to make decisions needs to go through some key modifications in the organic law of oil and gas. In 5-10 years, we just fail in testing and applying different the finite term of these contracts are extremely, they don't have any incentive, and they will go and just terminate contracts. And Camisea has already gone through 20 years, and it's still 10 years for these contracts. It's not about high rates, but also timelines, terms, to adapt our regulations. So fortunately, I've talked a lot with Iris Carnes, Vice Minister, and she has as a goal to try to, for the next 5 years, Peru has the possibility to make these efforts in looking for new reserves, more reserves. And this will depend on who's going to be elected as president first, to understand the problem and to be able to convince different stakeholders on a complicated issue. or to keep on investing in exploration of natural gas, sorry, to start this risk scenario. If we don't do anything, that will be the scenario. Fortunately, we have time, but this is not only a thing to do by Peru Petro, but at a higher level of decision making within the politics in the elections that are coming soon. Yes, Miguel. Yes, thank you for the invite. There is not much time of all the ideas that I have about Cesar's presentation, maybe at lunch. But I think that, well, I have 3 ideas that I would like to share in my intervention. I think that the issue is key. We need a reliable, flexible, sure, safe system that is like that throughout the energy transition period. It's Ocean is revising this energy policy, and they had the deadline this week, but they asked for an extension because they couldn't define the public issue or public problem that they needed to solve. And we've been talking about this. I do not know that for MEM it's not that easy to solve, and this is because we do not discuss about it. The group that the Ministry of Energy and Mines has inside is people from the ministry, and this is energy is about everyone here in this room: consumption, transmission, distribution, and generation. So there is something that we need to solve. My second idea is about speed. Generation, well, Rosa Maria is going to be investing there whenever we need. The curve is how the demand and supply are behaving, and sooner or later they meet it. So we will be building that, and the issue is when we have this volatility in prices, when we have these stress periods of time. So I think we are a blessed country. We have sun, wind, gas, water. We have everything, and even geothermal, and we do not know how we're going to do that. We have a lot of options and the opportunity to do different things about speed. And this goes a lot through the red tape, because we are not able to solve things. Land, that is a very complex issue. Mining as well, they have their own issues. I was talking with someone that told me sometimes that it is more contaminated. When you need to do the EIA, you need to consult, you need to hire consultants, and you need to print a lot of paper, and this is more contaminated than building a transmission line. So you mentioned in one of your slides, Cesar, we need to see that we need more transmission to get the energy where it's needed. When we had a gigawatt of sun in the south, how you will transfer or transmit that if we don't have transmission lines for that? And we need to plan a better, a more powerful transmission line system. And to respond to Rosa Maria's question, if the peak of diesel prices are good or not, at the end, this is a market, and this, I'm talking as an economist, this is my bias. So a peak on this will generate a stress time to be solved with more investment. And this is a sign that we want to give for the solutions that Cesar was proposing. This variability, volatility, it's more batteries, floating reserves. But the thing is how much this will cost and who will pay for this. And this cost needs to be internalized. Who makes that distortion? And this is in the law, but I'm really afraid because the first regulation of that law was completely poor. And this is worked without discussion, without involving or engaging the other stakeholders. And I think that it's highly relevant to attack this risk and to generate another opportunity that is going to be a interesting market for the following years. Thank you, Miguel. Nicolas, it's your turn. Thank you for the invite, Rosa Maria and Cesar, for your presentation. And maybe I have the most difficult part because 3 experts have already talked, and I will look new things to add. So first of all, the strategic objective that Cesar showed. The third one, this is the universal access to energy supply. And I would like to say that 9 out of 10 households have access to fuel, to cook, electric energy, liquefied gas. 9 of 10 households will still use, or 5 of 10 households will use wood to cook. So we are talking about renewable energy. And we don't see this problem that is a transition. These households need to have to improve their competitiveness, health, using non-contaminant fuels, as the INEI shows in their censuses. And we need to provide liquefied gas, natural gas to this household to talk about a real transition of energy here. So as Cesar mentioned, we have these 9 strategic objectives, and we don't know if these 9 are aligned. So from Virenza Instituto, we have an energy pathway, or rumbo energético, to have a clear path of what energy a market requires. And Miguel told us that the problem hasn't been able to be defined. So we need clear actions of what is needed. Because in the past 30 years, I believe that the systems have had its highs and lows, but it has been successful in multiplying, as Cesar said, almost 9 times the potential installed within that period of time. We are in a period, in a time that we need to make critical decisions into the future, and we need to be clear on what the system needs and how to benefit the final user. And then 2 things that have been mentioned already, the intermittence of the non-conventional renewable energy. This is the pipeline or portfolio that exists now. How to have those additional necessary services to mitigate this variability. And we have this law 32249 that modifies the generation law. We could talk about this later, and natural gas as well. There has been a lot of analysis that the natural gas will be depleted, and it has alerted in some way, and I would like to tell you that this is not like that. There are reserves. We have a lot 58 in Candamo, and now gas is reinjected every day because the demand is not enough of what could be produced. So obviously we do not do anything. Obviously Camisea gas will be depleted, but there are reserves that can be exploited. Lot 58 or Block 58 is the one that could be exploited soon. And also there is fuel, transition fuel, that allows from one side or partially to mitigate, reduce the variability in the non-conventional renewable energies. As Cesar mentioned, it's a win-win situation for everyone. Thank you. On this first stage, you 4 panel members, you see that we have different views. Well, some of those very similar, and in others very different. To make a summary, obviously, Cesar, if you would like to say something, you will have the floor in the second part of this session. Peru Petro needs to do their work. They need to dedicate to promote investment in exploration. They need to review if the current contracts need to be require authorities to think more on the medium and long term. Gonzalo would like to say something, and Cesar after that. Yes, Cesar tried to convey this message because maybe this is like a nightmare for him as time passes, right? There are two alternative scenarios with gas in the south and no gas in the south. And yes, and every day and every month that passes by and 6 months that passes by without making any decision, this will make uncertainty grow without adding any other technology, because someone making that decision will change the whole electrical system in Peru, and this could have inhibiting effects, or maybe not defining, could be the worst case scenario. And someone that needs to be in the COES, hopefully Cesar, 3 years from now, they could be very different views. We will have that in the one that is leading COES. Well, Gonzalo, sorry, I was a little bit confused about the uncertainty you are saying. Is exactly what the economic theory says. If there is uncertainty, I won't invest, and this could be a big problem. As things are evolving and the agents that come and propose their projects in COES, what I think is going to be happening is the other way around. They will try to beat gas, and the government promoting gas and having renewable energy, this will result in an excess of supply, because investors in renewable energy are competing amongst them. And we have seen this in the north part of Chile. This is a very graphical example. Any serious and responsible investor that will run their flows in the life cycle of the project, they would have detected that there will be a congestion and zero, and I will not invest. But they invest in spite of that, and then the government asks to solve the situation. So I think that being correct in the concept, this is something that it won't happen. Thank you, Cesar. And in this next round, you will have 5-6 minutes each, and I will be asking you very specific questions. We will start then with Nicolas. We will do it the other way around. You've mentioned, Nicolas, on the first part of your intervention, some part of the regulation the Ministry of Energy and Mine is working on. There is already a publication, and they will be pre-publishing the bidding process regulation on the recently passed law by the Congress.
What are the suggestions that you have? Well, actually, the answer to the first question is very short, and I don't think that as it is published, it is not going to benefit the end user. First, I just want to maybe talk about something that's more institutional. This trend that we have where, within the enabling legislation, they put things that are not on the law itself. And so in general, in any sector, don't think it should happen. And this is what's happening with this new law. Secondly, and going into the risks, we believe that if the objective is to reduce the rates to the regulated users, then I think these bidding processes should ensure the lowest price for 24 hours a day, and not just on these, periods of time that they will allow now. Unfortunately, the regulation does not consider this, and so they can do biddings based on the periods of time, and so that's when they say that this is more efficient, having this bidding based on independent periods of time during the day. But honestly, that it could we could end up having a higher price if this is not ensured. If this is not ensured, and this is what happened in Chile. Chile is a country that has pushed for non-conventional renewable energies, and if they have changed their system so that it is the lowest average price is ensured for 24 hours. And something else that is concerning at Vidensa is this, regulation that gives authority to OSINERMIN, the regulatory body, so that they can look at the new generators and not the ones that are already in the system. This will favor the new ones, of course, probably the solar, wind generators, but it doesn't really favor the end user necessarily, which is all of us, all of the users. And we understand that the goal of the law is to benefit the end users. And so here I also want to say something, which is this trend of giving more importance to the regulatory body, OSINERMIN, in making policy, because that is not their role. And so that creates discretionality, and the discretionality, of course, has an impact on the investment. And so finally, I just want to highlight this issue of intermittence. We wanted to reduce intermittence, of course, but considering the associated costs in terms of complementary services. So in general, they create the issue of paying it. Thank you very much. I think that you have done a very good summary. I really hope that the ministry not only listens to you, Nicolás, but also that really they, do their due diligence and reading all of the technical reports, legal and constitutional reports that the different actors, including CALPA, we have presented. Thank you very much for this summary. It's very clear. Miguel, I am going to now go to the economic issue because I am an economist. So I would like to have your opinion about the scenarios, the growth scenarios that Cesar showed us in terms of the demand. What do you think we need to do differently so that at least the 3% occurs in the segments of the Peruvian economy? Now, there's different parts of what Cesar mentioned. We need to see what is our leeway, and so that we can do this. Actually, part of this issue, and we really hope that we had a silver bullet, is the political instability. I remember that once we did a simulated model, and we took the political instability out of the model, and then with the macroeconomic conditions that we have, with the gold at 3,600 and etc., we could actually be closer to 5 than 3. So I think this is something that is really giving us a hard time, and that is an important issue. But then, on the other hand, and now that elections are coming, is that there's also the fact that people and the stakeholders react more to fear than to optimism. So let's say that there is a candidate that's leading the polls, then this 3 is going to go to 3.2. But let's think that maybe there is another candidate that we really don't like, and he's leading the polls. This 3% probably will go down pretty much below 2. So it's here to retract investment, and then this reduction in the GDP definitely automatically will be adjusted to a lower demand of energy. And then we can see that in the mining sector, we do have some mining projects, and definitely more so than new projects, we have expansions of projects. And of course, a mining project takes time. Probably you all know this much more than I do, but you need to solve the social issue. You need to, solve many, many things. Tia Maria, for instance, it's quite advanced, and probably that is not going to be solved until 2027 or 28. You cannot accelerate that. So anything that we can do today definitely is just sowing the seeds for the demand growth in 3-4 years. Something that could help, though, when it comes to political stability, is the weight that the new chamber will have, the new Senate, because the Senate, this new Congress chamber, will be able to stop the other chamber. They will be able to modify some things. If the Senate is, relatively good, at least it doesn't interrupt things, I think it will be a good, it will be good news. It doesn't matter how, whatever we have at the other chamber, but maybe that gives us some, light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, so I wanted to comment on how can we generate more what about the state-owned distribution companies? The state-owned distribution companies, they have all of the problems and locks and checks and balances to do investment. So their investment is around 30% of what they should be. And then what this causes is that there is a lot of repressed demand. And so constantly the state-owned distribution companies, they don't have the capacity to serve. And so usually this happens in the transmission systems and in their own distribution systems. And this is a problem that is getting worse. It's not getting better because nobody really is looking at finding a solution, because they are still state-owned, because they cannot find solutions, because the solutions that have been presented, they don't really apply them. But there is a very notable demand. I always say, I've talked to people at the MEF, and they say, how do you want economic reactivation if in the last mile, it's not there? So that should not only be solved, but it should be solved because the quality of service, it's going to be bad. Very true. Yes, I think this is one of the things that we need to tackle rapidly to be able to solve it. We see it every day. Many of our clients who are in the north, now, I mean, even without talking about domestic consumers, but everything that we see in the north of many clients that want to double their capacity,
Lo pueden hacer por un problema de las distribuidoras estatales.
and they cannot do it because the state-owned distribution companies haven't invested on the expansion of their transmission, and they I'm not even talking about increasing quality. Maintaining quality is an issue. So this is something that we need to tackle, and addressing it very rapidly. We need to talk to FONAFE to see what we do. Thank you, Cesar, for bringing it up. Okay, we take due note, and this is going to be an immediate homework for everyone. I think that several of the topics that we heard in the first round, and Gonzalo already talked about this, and this issue of gas, and in general in Camise and other plots, I would like to ask something else. Cesar mentioned everything that they do with the transmission plan and everything that has to do, in the future, maybe 10 years from now, in order to have a transmission plan that contains all of the lines, the new lines, and their, backups and everything that is needed countrywide. And then, of course, this has to be put up for opinions and feedback. Then it is approved by the authority. Then Proinversión has to say what kind of projects need to be bidded for. But when we went along together with the transmission companies have thousands of problems, many issues. First thing that, those that are backup that you would, you could say that maybe it's easier, that could be directly awarded to the one that has the line, the one that has the asset now, and it could be faster, better, with certain competitive advantages. They don't do it because they say, no, I don't want to, I don't want to give it directly an award to someone. I want to bid it. But when you bid it, when you bid a backup, which is, there's no competition. Nobody bids. And then the problem is in the national grid, and of course, particularly Cesar, who ends up stressed out. And then the second question is national, more nationally, when there have to be new lines, the transmission companies, they find problems of every kind, and they are very similar to the problems that we have in the mining sector, between permits that are delayed and problems in contracting and the prior consultations and negotiation for lots and the easement problems. Anyway, what can we do so that we can solve this very fast? Well, I think that your question shows that it has been increasingly difficult for us to expand our infrastructure around the country. And in some cases, and I have talked about this with Jorge and Christian more than once, the issues and challenges that we have to develop mining projects and not so much hydrocarbon projects are now encompassing also these other activities. Sometimes we need to maybe be more balanced in terms of how we think. We know that there is a concern, but there's also vested interests, and we need to think about that. And the vested interests that exist are not the right ones sometimes, just to use a milder word. That will require some amendments on the law, I think.
Este es un gobierno que termina.
And usually the governments that are, incumbent, and then a new one comes in and they don't have much capacity to do those changes. So, yeah, you can change the law of prior consultation. They're not going to do it. That's not something that is going to be feasible. But there are some mechanisms that can be more effective. Now, going back to Cesar, I've also talked about this with Christian. If we look at the issue of distributors and the sub-transmission lines, definitely the ones who are in the best position are the distributing companies, because they are there. They are specialists in transmission, so they need to be in charge of the sub-transmission lines, maybe through a bidding or some other mechanism. And if for some reason nobody bids, there's no bidder, then you can always appoint someone who's there, who will make it more efficiently and less costly. Of course, there are risks. You have the controllerships and the auditor general, but we need to decide and we need to make a decision. And then whoever you appoint to be in these public positions, and I'm talking about the ministry, I'm talking about the directorates, they need to make the decisions. I'm not so concerned when you look at the number of lines that have been bidded. Of course, all of the transmission companies are here. You have Christian, Shakira. there are many things that are going to be built that on paper it doesn't look like a problem, but there is an implementation, there is an execution problem. I think that's what makes things more complicated. Something else that I, think when I hear some of the comments, the Ministry of Energy and Mines today is developing a new energy policy plan with the support of the multilateral cooperation agencies. It will take some time because it has to be done based on the policies that exist, and definitely that will, imply some red tape and time. But I think it's underway. I really hope that we have a more updated product in the end. That's what we need. And then just one last thing, and I'm sorry, Alfredo, you're my friend, and I'm sorry if there's somebody here that I don't know, but I don't see Osina Hermin here in the room. I only see Alfredo because he is interested in this, beyond being on the board of Osina Hermin, the regulatory body. And maybe, as part of the political difficulties we've had in the past few years, I was talking to an international investor not so long ago that when I left on July 17th, I left the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Since then, there have been 17 ministers. So that creates a lot of difficulty. That's challenging, even for the policy side in the ministry, because we see that Osina Hermin is more like an activist. They have people and resources, and sometimes they try to do energy policy. They try to go into policy making when they are not a policy making body. And I have several friends in Osina Hermin, but I do think that we have this urgent need of, okay, you do what you're doing best. That's not your job. Now, I'm going to ask a couple questions to Engineer Herrera Descalzi, and then you will wrap up, Cesar. You will finish with this session. I know that today we need like 60% of the production of electrical energy in the country is renewable. And I say 60% because the hydro plants are also renewable. I have been, going through the different rooms here in Perumin, the forum, the, lunches and the booths, and renewable, they think that it's only solar and wind. No, renewable energy, hydro plants are also renewable energy. I think Peru is blessed. 60% of the production today in Peru is made by renewable energy, and 40% is gas. And so among wind and solar, we have around 10 or 11% this year in terms of production. It's led by solar and wind. So to say that we do have a curtailment issue in some areas, or what happened in Chile, with 10% of a share, or I don't think that's a problem. I really don't think that's a problem. Or at least a serious problem. Actually, Peru doesn't have the problem that other countries in the region have. But what you have seen in terms of permits, I think now we see between wind and solar, there's like 30,000 megawatts in projects, and also with the current incumbents in Peru. And we see that all of the investors are doing that. And then the deeper the penetration in the future, the more we will require complementary services, as we are seeing today. The engineer, what kind of services will be required? In your experience of what happened in Chile and Spain, how do you think that the enabling legislation has to be, about the complementary services market in Peru, so that we don't have to go through the problems that other countries have gone through, and maybe to be more proactive and to think ahead and what's coming into the future? I would like to answer as a user, and not a big user, just a common user. I want electricity. Whenever I need it, and I want to have it. And that is availability. That's what this system has. And when you pay for power, you are paying for the investment so that the end user has the availability of energy whenever they need it. I think that all of the stakeholders in the system have to help in a way. And if they don't have it, they need to buy it or complement it in a way, because there are technical ways of doing it. And of course, I'm sorry, I think that it is a complete outrage to think about demands by hour. I don't know anybody who requires energy by hours. I think that the sense of availability is like a TV. Whenever I want to watch a movie, I want the TV to be there and to turn it on. I'm not going to buy, TV by 1 hour, for 1 hour. I think this is just silly. I think that this is being done just to favor one person or company, and it's not the end user for certain. And then the system also has a technical solution, because the technical solution is storage of energy, and the storage of energy can be complemented. It can be complemented by, users that exist in the system. And so you have maybe you need more machines or to defer dispatching. I mean, there's ways of solving this. It's all about investment also. So whenever anybody wants to come and they want to take the market, they have to do it like that. But allow me just to, talk about two very quick things, and Gonzalo mentioned this very properly. Gonzalo said that if there is a blackout, they will just remove and dismiss the Minister of Energy and Mines. But let's look at what happened in Germany. The facts are not exactly like this, but I just want to highlight my point. Germany had a Green Party for many years that aspired to, to take over the government, and they were going against the coal centrals. And then they said the coal stations were not being used anymore when they took over. But then the war with Ukraine and all of the issues with gas, and then the Russian gas was missing, and then they were left without electricity. And you know what they had to do? They had to turn on the coal stations. So their 30-year blabber about not using coal, they had to revert it. Why? Because you understand what electricity is. I am not talking about energy. I'm talking about a specific component, which is electricity. If you understand what it means when you don't have it. And then it doesn't matter if it comes from coal or dirty or whatever, you need to have it. You need availability when you need it. So there cannot be economic growth in a country if you don't have electricity to support that. Peru is closing up a cycle, the Camisea cycle, because Camisea gave Peru the opportunity to, to be the backup, to cover for 18 months and very cheap. And then in the future, we don't even have 18 months. And I am not really, if I am thinking about an electrical system, I will all say it's 100% renewable energy. Yes, I would think about 100% renewable system. And I would also think about having gas as a fundamental backup for the dry seasons, for the difficult moments, because, we already paid for the machinery and the only thing that I need is the gas. And the gas, I would just devote it to other things, petrochemical, for instance, where it is indispensable, and other areas where they could have more value. What I'm saying is that the situation that Peru lived with Camisea, and it is actually being over now. It won't repeat. I really hope that Peru can find something like Vaca Muerta. Vaca Muerta is like 100 Camiseas. We really we couldn't find a second camisea, and having been able to in 25 years. So if we want to continue, we need to go to a system that is certain. I don't like, and I agree with Cesar that some of these are very general, and I also find that they are contradictory in a way. I don't like these, competitiveness. It's quite vague and ambiguous. I want you to tell me that the system is safe, reliable, efficient, cheap, etc. These are the main characteristics that we need to have. So today we are in a system where, the future is about wind and solar, yes, but they need to also pay for the complementary services. When I talked to some people at the ministry, I didn't have the opportunity to, give my opinion because they invited me to a congress. I was traveling and I couldn't really go there and participate in person. So I talked to the people at the ministry. They told me to support them and to help them in developing the law. But they told me that what they are co-funding with is paying for complementary services. So as long as these complementary systems are paid for, I think that the grid can work very well.
Prometo que
I promise, just one more minute. Yes, because you need to wrap up this session, Cesar, because you've made this presentation, you have lectured us, you have 1 minute to wrap up this session. So if there is a blackout, you need to kick off the COE's head before the minister, right? First you will be kicked out, and then the minister, and that's something true. Well, we've had a great presentation. Thank you, Cesar. This has been a great panel of experts as well. And I would like you to take this positive message because we are in Arequipa. We are in a very mining region, Perumin, that is the greatest mining farm in our country. So please do not worry, because we've been talking about risks in the future, and what we need to do not to have those risks. So we have generation that is efficient, that is safe, that is not expensive, in good prices, a transmission system that is robust, that works, and many investors in the generation and transmission sector to keep on betting on this country. The reforms are required in some regulatory space or things, and we hope that this works okay, and we've been doing it okay in the whole history Cesar has showed. So the industry keep on investing, and we will be there keeping up with you always. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. There is an official picture before leaving.
Interrumpimos, o más bien...
Well, we will wait for you for the second part of the session at 3 in the afternoon. Thank you.